Are we going to believe in God, or are we going to play God ourselves?
Essentially, for the left, the choice that they see very clearly is people are going to depend upon God or they are going to depend upon government. They want people to depend upon government, so they have to destroy faith in God.
At its core, it's a rebellion against God and God's laws.
And that's what the battle is about. That's what the assault is on. That's why Christianity is a target.
And that's why we saw the gulags in the Soviet Union. We saw the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And all the ideologies that elevate man end up devaluing certain human beings.
Dictators of the left, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Castro, and all the others, always have come to power by acting like they're going to change things to make it better for the people. Yet history has shown us the devastating results that have happened every single time. There is no example in history of big government that didn't abuse its power over the people. But people who have believed in the God of the Bible and that our rights are a gift from Him to everyone have always stood up for the preciousness of every human life.
You look at those who have fought for true human rights throughout the ages, and it's those that do have a strong faith in God, those who fought against slavery, and those now today who are fighting for the sanctity of human life.
Like the Declaration says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal. Aristotle didn't believe that. He said, no, some people are born to be slaves, and some other people are born to rule over them. And the reason that you and I know different, and it's not because we're smarter than Aristotle, he was a smart man. But we have something he didn't have. We have the Bible. And so, therefore, that's where we get these ideas. And from pagan antiquity or neo-paganism or all the modernisms, you get the opposite.
After studying this topic for the last 2 years and reading literally hundreds of their books and articles and speeches, I've come to the conclusion, whether the left knows it or not, their plans and goals can all be summed up very simply. They are at war with God. A people that are moral and believe their rights come from God would not only never want what they're selling, but would also never need it. And they know that.
Let's just take a moment and recap here. There's so much information. It comes pretty fast and furious. Okay. So, why are they so against morality? Notice he starts out, the communists knew in the 1930s and since that time, and the leftists know today, that if you can break down what? Cultural traditions. Cultural traditions. And where do the cultural traditions come from in America? Well, they did come from Christianity. But where are we now? What are the cultural traditions now? What's considered culturally acceptable today in America? We need to be tolerant. So tolerance has become held up as being really important. And so the cultural traditions that the founding fathers believed in and totally accepted are being completely undermined and thrown away. If you could have told the founding fathers, the whole bunch of them, that we would come to a point in America where we would not only allow homosexuality, but that we would promote it, and that anyone spoke against it could go to jail, I'm sure they would not have believed it. They would not have believed that that's where America, and yet that's where we're at. Cultural traditions had to be changed. Now, in communist countries, do they promote homosexuality as an important part of their culture? No, not even close. So all it is a tool to disrupt America. That's all it is. Did you guys get one of these? Is there any more of them out there? No. This is for Sunday school. I wonder if there's any more of these. Maybe we might, oh, sorry. She had to work hard this morning. Does anybody know what happened? This is the new one that starts at, Oh, she just gave it to you? Perfect. You didn't get one either, Brad? Okay. Does anybody know we had a whole stack of these laying on the desk in the office, and we came this week and they were gone? Communists came and got them. If anybody knows where they are, she wouldn't have to print anymore. If anybody knows, you could help us find those. Okay. Okay, so it says these are more of the same? Okay. Brad didn't get one. Oh, he's got it. No, that's it. That's it. Okay, if anybody else needs it. Okay, so where? Oh, maybe people picked them up last week. Could be that you picked them up last week. Okay, no worries. That's probably what happened. Okay, so they recognize that it's all part of the same fabric. Their ideologies all work together to break down families, to break down the sanctity of human life. And wow, have they been successful. Break down the value of human life. Break down the idea that there is a God and that we're accountable to Him. Okay? And so it's interesting that by the things that they're attacking, they actually validate Christianity. Isn't that interesting? Because they want to destroy it. And yet the only people that don't seem to understand what's going on are Americans. And like I told you a little bit ago about the young man just done with high school, he has no idea what you're talking about when you say this is all part of an agenda that socialists in America have been pursuing for some time. It's like we're totally oblivious to what's going on. Okay? A people cannot be given what without morality? Cannot be given freedom without morality, or they will self-destruct. Does that make sense? Think about that. If people were just given freedom to do whatever they want, but without morality, wow, it would be chaos, wouldn't it? So the importance of freedom, so we can't just go around espousing just freedom. It's got to be freedom together with biblical morality, because without biblical morality, freedom is going to be a disaster. It's going to be anarchy. And that's very important to understand. Okay? Our Constitution was made only for what kind of people? Moral and religious people. John Adams. Some of the people who made statements like this weren't exactly the men of God. They weren't exactly necessarily born-again Christians that believe like we do, and yet they recognized that without a moral and religious people, this form of government could not work. You know, I think one of the things that we often overlook is what was going on politically at the time that our founding fathers were designing the Declaration or designing our Constitution. I don't know how much you know about the French Revolution, but I think it had a major, massive impact on what was going on in the founding of our country. And sometimes we're oblivious to the factors that led into the things that were happening in Europe was the background, and they were looking at it saying, whoa, we want to be careful we don't make the same mistakes that led to the slaughter of a lot of people. And so they were trying to look for something and design something that would be totally different. And they did. Yes, sir. Let's see, where's it at? Where? After sanctity. They essentially are validating. Validating, yes, thank you. I'm sorry, who's asking? Raise your hand so I can see you. Yes? Cultural traditions. Cultural traditions. Americans. So many Americans just don't seem to see it. And yes. Yeah, if I go too fast, feel free to stop me, and ask for the corrections on it. Okay? So at the time he made this, 10 years ago, how many marriages were ending in divorce in America? 50%. And how many of all children are born out of wedlock? 40%. And in some communities, that rate's much higher. Okay, especially the black community, they say it's like 75%, but I think it's definitely moving up in all communities. So, and when you have children raised in a one-parent situation, especially without a father, there are consequences for all of society and culture, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to have children raised without having the stability of a mother and father together in the home working together. How many women a day are aborting their babies? 3,000. 19 million new cases of sexually transmitted diseases every year. Wow. And children being taught that everything's relative. Over the last 12 months, in his district in Idaho, 7% of all high school students tried to commit suicide. So, I read the article from England how the children, or how young people from 16 to 25, or whatever the age group was, 89% said they have no purpose for life. We got to wake up to these things and realize that has got to have a huge impact on society and culture. It's very interesting. This is, in some ways, dovetails with what we'll talk about in the morning worship hour. It's really amazing, but men that were called to go off to war, knowing that they might not come back alive, and many of them did not, ended up with a greater sense of purpose in their sacrifice than we do when we have everything handed to us. Isn't that interesting to think about? So we work so hard to have prosperity and comfort and all these wonderful things, and it ends up with the result of we end up with less purpose because there's no sacrifice involved. God did not design us to live for just me, and yet that's what we've done. We have made an entire generation that is so me-focused and oriented. Karl Marx said, "My object in life is to dethrone who? God, and destroy capitalism." And even many Christians today are saying, well, capitalism, I don't know, it's bad, it's bad. Why? Who are we listening to? We're being infiltrated by people who are trying to put lies in our mind to persuade us that something is evil. Look who said this. Karl Marx. His goal in life, his object in life, dethrone God, destroy capitalism. Consider the source. But we need to help the younger generation everywhere we have opportunity to learn the truth, to find out where this stuff comes from. All right? So he knew that his competition was God. Okay? To believe in freedom, where we have been raised, you have to believe that there's something, what, about every human life? Precious. The sanctity of human life. We're all made in the image of God. So there's something precious about every human person. We're made in the image of God. Okay? Which entitles to respect, dignity, and freedom. And this is what's so important. This is distinctive to biblical Christianity. You don't get that anywhere else. I love it when he made reference to Aristotle. Aristotle is a brilliant man. He didn't believe that every individual had value. That's a Christian doctrine. That comes right out of the Bible. Okay, almost all the ideas that have made America such a unique and great country, our founding fathers got straight out of the Bible. I guess that's why the left only has a problem with one religion, biblical Christianity. Don't you get a chuckle out of the fact that the left has no problem with Islam, for example, and yet Islam, what does Islam teach about homosexuality? Does Islam say, oh, yeah, it's good, it's good? Capital offense. They kill people who are convicted of being homosexual. So how does the left embrace both Islam and homosexual community? What's going on there? Or the women, the role of women. And no. It just demonstrates that all they're trying to do is just to tear down and destroy everything that was put into our country at the founding and everything that comes from Christian and biblical values. All right, I'm trying to find, let's see, to believe in freedom. There was one word I didn't get. Maybe you guys got it. So after the Bible blank and the Christianity blank, then it comes down, it says, essentially for the left, the choice they see very clearly is people are going to depend upon God or they are going to depend upon government. Government, that's what it is, yep. Okay, so they definitely want to get us more and more and more dependent upon government. So what are they going to do? They're going to enact programs to where the government holds our hand for everything, where we need the government, where we can't exist without the government. That's their plan, because that is moving in the direction they want it to go, of socialism. And so that's why Christianity is a target, right? Christianity is a target because Christians are the ones who are going to stand up and say, wait a minute. God holds us accountable individually, and the values that he established are worth defending and protecting. So we Christians are going to have a target. Let's see here. Patrick sent me a link. Professor, I am Antifa, talks about attacking President Trump and killing Christians. Jeff Klinsman, a Kirkwood College adjunct professor, English professor, has gone on the record to confirm that he is Antifa. Antifa supposedly means anti-fascist. In fact, they are fascist. Isn't it funny how they use their terms and they mean just the opposite of what they're saying? They're lying even in their titles. And so for those who are unfamiliar with Antifa, let's get you up to speed. Antifa is a group of people who claim to be anti-violence while deploying violence. They claim to support freedom of speech while violently shutting down the speech of those with whom they disagree. These individuals will agitate and instigate in hopes of throwing punches, swinging bats, hammers, and crowbars. And this is the group that President Trump is now talking about declaring them a domestic terrorist group. Yeah, but here's what's interesting. So you have these people going out, and he's a professor at a college, and making a statement on his website or whatever it was, his page, that he wants to bash Trump and kill Christians. And we're paying this guy. He's paid by our tax dollars. Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the direction things are going. And if we're not careful, this is where it will go. So he goes on and says, dictators of the left, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Castro, and all the others, always have come to power by acting like they're going to change things to make it better. They're promising they're going to make things better. Yet history has shown us the devastating results that have happened every single time. There's no example in history of big government that didn't abuse its power over the people. And we have a living laboratory. It's called Venezuela. Here was a country that had oil and oil exports. They were a wealthy country. And they, not that long ago, 30 years ago, took in socialism, accepted socialism, became a socialist nation, and look at them now. Look at what's happened. The people are starving, and the place is in absolute chaos. Why? Because once you consolidate the power in the hands of a few people. Now, if you could find leaders who are altruistic, who are just plain wonderful people, you know, if you could find human beings that never sin and always treat everyone fairly and never take advantage of anyone, then I guess a dictatorship could work. Problem is the world has never found one of these people. There's only one that will eventually work in that role, and it's Jesus Christ. Short of him, every one of us are sinful individuals. And so when you consolidate the power in the hands of one or two or a little group of people, it's going to fail because we're sinners. And that's the problem. And yet, that's what they want to move towards, is being run by this little group. In the Declaration, he says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal. And that's where he goes on to say, but Aristotle didn't believe that. No. And so where do we get this? We get this from the Bible. That's where these ideas come from. From pagan antiquity or paganism or modernism, you get the opposite. So whether the left knows it or not, their plans and goals can be all summed up very simply. They are at war with God. Because it's only belief in the true living God that stands in their way of world domination, taking complete control. That's it. Okay, Rusty, let's roll this again, please. What do you mean by we? This is a great question. Okay. Okay. Cheryl, were you going to answer that question? Yes?
In the teacher credential program that I was in, I remember our history class was more our social studies, was about, observing different cultures and everything. And one of the books we had was to actually identify, oh, that's a Judeo-Christian philosophy, like
Like an
a
insidious...
knight defeating a dragon.
Yeah.
That's good over evil. Well, why is the dragon evil? And so that was a Judeo-Christian, they were saying, and it was kind of against, or in a way against that.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Calling into question.
Yeah, calling into question all those things, and well, let's find something that's not, let's teach something that's
Right.
a different culture, not just Judeo-Christian, and
Right.
it was interesting. And it's funny because now I see that like in movies.
Right.
I'll see where the dragons are now the good guys,
Right.
or something that is traditionally thought as evil is now, and you see it with all the remakes of the Disney movies with they're now, like Maleficent, the bad witch or whoever is now the victim. I don't
Interesting.
know. But
Interesting.
that doesn't
No,
totally
yeah.
answer your question. It just,
No, but
that it
it's-
made me think about that.
And of course, another part of the answer to the question is what we learned in the last 2 weeks, that the specific objective of the socialists in America was to infiltrate the teachers' colleges and the teachers' unions, to take them over and to get them persuaded that capitalism and the way that America is bad, and that we need to be socialist. And so they've done that as a specific goal. And he's going to talk about, I don't know if he already talked about this or it's coming, I can't remember. The specific, the role of the labor unions, the teachers' unions, because they have tremendous power over what the teachers do, so that they're going to require their teachers to follow a certain line, and these people are controlled specifically by the Socialist and Communist Party of America. So there's this connection that puts it all together. And so the person that's trying to be a good, respectable teacher is under tremendous pressure to follow the party line. What did Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's Ruth Bader Ginsburg? She's hopefully the next Supreme Court justice to be replaced. No, I mean, she can resign. She didn't have to stay there till she dies. But she was consulted about a country in Africa, it seems to me, that wanted to form a new form of government, and they consulted her, and she says, no, you don't want to start with the Constitution for the United States. She's supposed to be defending the Constitution of the United States, and she's telling a government that comes and asks her, what about, no, don't follow ours, that would be bad for you. She didn't even believe in it. So this problem is at every layer of our culture and society, and it's happened over a period of years, and for the most part, as long as it doesn't interfere with my life personally, I do a Brazilian there. Right? No, it's coming home to roost on us, little by little. And so Christian schools, we hope and pray, are doing better in teaching the truth, but right now the public schools are being forced by legislation to teach the important contributions of homosexuals in our history as a higher priority than teaching the actual history of what's happened in our country and why we are where we are. So it doesn't come as any surprise that there are young people marching in the streets with Antifa and doing these things. They totally think that our country is the bad place, that we're the aggressors. Yes, Joan? Yeah, but it's because we're recording, and it helps also.
For I don't know how many years our standardized testing, the achievement tests that your students take, they are all in social studies. Nothing is in there in history.
Yeah. So it's being crammed down their throat. And even then, for the Christian school students are having to also still take the same stuff in order to pass and go on to college. So it's a concerted effort. Can you hand that back to Nancy, please?
I have this.
Oh, she got her microphone on. Go ahead.
By the time the children are in middle school, I'm noticing now that they have no idea about how our country was founded.
Right.
They didn't get it.
Right.
And I think it happened before that. And now it's all about women's rights, this,
Yes.
that, all agendas.
Yes.
That's what they get in their social studies book. It's
I
that thick.
Yes, I remember 20 years ago coming home from Brazil on a furlough, and for 1 year I was a Civil Air Patrol chaplain up in Portland, Aurora, Oregon. And I remember interacting with a whole group of cadets. I don't even remember, it must have been moral leadership. In any case, we were discussing something and politics came into it. And I knew this one young man who was he was in high school somewhere. I knew he was a born-again Christian because I'd talked to him. And I was quite shocked when he came down on the side of communist ideology rather than American. I'm going, wait a minute. You're telling me, wait a minute. I mean, I didn't confront him in front of the group, but he's from a Christian home, a church home. And yet he was espousing communist doctrine. He didn't even realize what he was doing because that's what's been pumped into their heads in the public school system. That was 20-some years ago. This is what we're facing. And so we're in rough shape. All right, Rusty, let's go ahead and roll a little bit more and take it from there.
It's obvious if you're trying to subvert a country, you want to control the news. You want to control public opinion.
A lot of people realize, well, there's a biased media, and most people know that. Even the Washington Post admitted it. Yeah, we were biased for Obama, so what?
And when you enter into the equation, so what? That means the biases, the opinions of the reporters enter into what is news. They decide whether you have a right to know.
And it's no longer a bias. They turn from just political bias to activism.
They go to the places that influence, or I should say, where they can have leverage.
Generations of journalists have been trained to interpret events, interpret the news, not report the facts, interpret the news.
They do not deal in facts because facts aren't effective for them. They have very few facts on their side.
They've gone into and penetrated these major areas to where they can influence it in the direction they want to go.
We've seen a massive shift away from old-fashioned objective news reporting to what he called interpretive reporting, what others call advocacy journalism. And it's advocacy for a cause.
And as a result, we have a news media in the United States that is extremely liberal at the present time.
Which was a major, major goal, to control not merely the newsprint, but the television media and Hollywood. Stalin said himself, if I could control Hollywood, I could rule the world.
Children are always the first targets of anybody trying to bring down a system.
John Dewey is believed to be the most influential man in the whole area of public education.
He went to Russia in 1928 to help study the Karl Marx way of education and bring it back to America.
Dewey was an atheist. He was a socialist, a humanist.
He was part of the Socialist Society in America, helped found that.
What he believed in was that education should socialize the child to make him a willing tool of the state.
It might be surprising to some that the man who is still idolized as the father of public education in America is the very man who did everything in his power to dumb down our children so that they would willingly accept his vision of a socialist America.
It started with Dewey in the early 1900s. It expanded, really expanded since the 1960s. The hard left gets control of the teachers' unions and the training colleges. If you've got those two institutions, you can pretty much dictate all educational policy.
The people who were demonstrating against our country and against our government in the 1960s have now become tenured professors in the universities. So they're the ones who are writing the textbooks, teaching the teachers, running the teachers' colleges.
And it's self-perpetuating, because once you have the universities, then you train more cadres and more and more and more.
And they discovered that they could do more to remake our country by going into the schools than they could by throwing bombs.
I believe the average patriotic American underestimates the importance and influence education has on their children. That's how the large majority we had in 1980 to elect Ronald Reagan in a landslide has been lost. It's not because the other side has had lots of children. No, they're aborting theirs. But instead they're capturing ours through the propaganda they teach them, 7 hours a day for 13 years, and even longer if they attend college. We are losing most of our children to the other side because of the anti-American, anti-God, and anti-free enterprise rhetoric they are filled with in the government schools.
Government schools are not teaching basic reasoning processes. They're not teaching logic. They're not teaching actual data of history and science and mathematics.
And if your education is rather limited, then you're inclined to believe that government can be the solution to your problems.
When you look at the desks in the schoolroom, you'll find 4 together, or maybe a table, they sit around a table. Independent desks are very rare in most classrooms because they don't want to promote the self-sufficiency, independence mindset.
You go back to William Z. Foster in his book, Towards Soviet America, you will see how he has a whole chapter there on how we have to supplant education in this country and ultimately force every student to attend public school. That's the other thing. I hope the homeschoolers catch on to this. The homeschoolers and the Christian day school movement are going to have some very rough times ahead of them because the public school crowd cannot afford to have any competition. And they're being given plenty of competition by the homeschoolers right now.
You see the effects of that in lowered educational standards. There's no more studying of the classics or studying of the civics or how the US Constitution was formed. It's all progressive education. It's all based on the identity politics, the isms, the current trendy isms, environmentalism, racism.
They're training them for the collective, and a collective mindset and a dependency mindset.
And it seems that they, again, want to have people be uneducated, so then they do become wards of the state. They're dependent on the government to provide everything for them.
It's under 10% of kids believe that there is an absolute right and an absolute wrong. And why are we surprised? We've sent our kids into this government system that indoctrinates them, that teaches them about tolerance and diversity and multiculturalism, and not about reading, writing, and arithmetic, not about what our founding fathers had to say. It's consequences.
Few would argue that the education the children are receiving in the public schools is pathetic at best. But with the amount of tax dollars we spend each year, over twice as much as it would cost to send the students to private school, why do we allow this to continue? The group that my investigation led me to, that seems dedicated to making sure the children don't get a good education, was a real shocker.
The schools are pretty much controlled by the Teachers Union, the National Education Association.
If you look at their platform and goals, you would think they were a socialist or almost communistic organization.
They are for the entire feminist agenda, starting with abortion on demand, tax-funded abortions. They're for the whole gay rights agenda. They're for the whole globalism agenda. They are extremely anti-parent. It is an effort to get the children to abandon the values of their parents.
National Education Association has no patience, tolerance, or use for traditional teachers. They're looking for people who want to be agents of change.
They want to throw out all the lessons of history. And really it's an attempt to then impose their own views and ideas onto people, get them to act as activists.
If you control those institutions then you can control everything else.
It's all public schools, all for their jobs, and they have gotten behind all of the radical kinds of curriculum that's being introduced. They're for it 100%. They've had a tremendous effect on public education. It's not positive.
We also see immorality being promoted through our schools. The kind of sex ed curriculum that is being used and paid for with our tax dollars would shock most parents.
I think one of the main problems we face is parents naively thinking that the schools are the same today as they were when they were young. They don't realize there is a battle going on in this country for the hearts and minds of our children.
The game is between 15 and 25 years of age. That's the whole game. If you're over 25, the chances are they're going to put a few pennies towards you to corrupt you. But their game right now is to corrupt the 15 to 25-year-olds or less. And right now they're down in the first grade with Heather has two mommies, Daddy's roommate, gay pride parade. And now by 8th grade, they'll pass out condoms in school colors because that's so patriotic.
And it's perfectly obvious that you get a hold of the child early, you can change.
Just because our time is running out here. Okay. So the two major areas that you're talking about so far attacking is media and education. So no longer bias, you just turn from, they turn from just political bias to activism. Activism. Is that what's going on in the media today? Remember, this movie was made about 10 years ago. And it is spelling out exactly where we're at today. The news reporters, supposedly reporters, it's not reporting, it's activism. And they've been trained to interpret events. So they're not telling you what happened, they're telling you why what happened is right or wrong based on their thinking, right? Based on their political mindset. And I don't know, I mean, I understand that Walter Cronkite was very liberal-minded, but it didn't show nearly as much, did it? You couldn't just outright see clearly that he was a leftist when he reported the news. I assume most of us know who that is, Walter Cronkite. But now, I mean, it's just right out there. They don't have any bones about it. It's so obvious. Okay, so advocacy journalism, right? They're advocating their point of view. They're trying to force society to believe what they believe. Okay, instead of just simply telling the truth. Stalin said, if I could control Hollywood, I can rule the world. Well, he's dead and buried, but he's basically controlling Hollywood, and therefore he's controlling the world. Education. Lenin said, give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. Okay, John Dewey, oh wow, father of modern American education, and yet he was a socialist. He went to Russia. He was an atheist, he was a socialist and a humanist, okay? He was part of the Socialist Society of America, and that's what he was doing. He didn't just, again, we look at these guys and we assume that, oh, they're just such good people trying to do good things. No, they stepped into an important position to manipulate and to turn America against the values that we've always held. All right? The hard left gets control of the teachers' unions and the training colleges. And again, so in order to be credentialed, you've got to go through their system and their process. And therefore, you're going to have to sign them, and you're going to have to say things the way they want it said, or you're not even going to get credentialed. How convenient. Okay? So when you have those two institutions, you can pretty much dictate all educational policy. So they're going to design the new curriculum. They're going to write the new curriculum, teachers that have been trained in their point of view. And so the truth is just plain watered down and destroyed. And as he said, it's self-perpetuating. They discovered they could do more to remake our country by going into the schools than they could by throwing bombs. Okay, interesting. So it's not about taking over the country by violent revolution, at least not at the beginning. But it's about, first of all, infiltrating and taking us down. And of course, they can't afford to have any competition. You see the effects of that in what? Educational standards. You may catch that? Fairness? I think they said fairness right there. You see the effects of that in fairness educational standards. So they're trying to claim it's fairness, but that's not what it's about. Oh yeah, we know they've dumbed down the SAT. Well, it's not fair to certain groups. Certain groups are going to be. It's not fair for them if so we've got to make it simpler so that certain groups that don't have as good of educational standards won't be biased against them. Well, at the very same time, they want to specifically single out homeschool students to be biased against them getting into college. And so they do it also through the testing process. And in some cases, some universities are not accepting the standards of homeschool students who've gone through the curriculum and can tell them even their evolutionary lies. They can answer all the questions on the test, but, well, you didn't go through a government school, and so in some cases, they're not being allowed into universities because you did it at a homeschool instead of doing it in a public school. Well, I would say it isn't fair, but they're doing this they're doing this all in concern out of fairness, of course. All right? So it's all based on the identity politics, the isms, the current trendy isms, environmentalism, racism. They're training for the collective. And a collective mindset and a dependency mindset. Under 10% of kids today believe that there is an absolute right and an absolute wrong. Okay? That's like what Cheryl was saying, or somebody was saying about even the monsters now it's not their fault. So we're going to even make the monsters, victims. And so how can kids know what's right and what's wrong? You heard about what they just did in San Francisco this week? If a person is a convicted felon, they don't want to call him a felon anymore. They want to call him a judicially involved person. Judicially involved person, which, by the way, both the perpetrator of the crime and the victim are both referred to as a judicially involved person. So if a woman is raped, both she and the person who raped her are both considered judicially involved persons. Wow! I don't know. Wow. Okay. So, right and wrong is completely out the window. No, I goofed that. Anyway, I forgot. Anyway. Okay. If you look at their platform and goals, you would think that they were a socialist or almost communist organization. They are for the entire, I think that's where the fairness went in. I messed up on that one. Huh? Feminist agenda. Thank you. That's what it was. Thank you, Ron. All right? For the entire feminist agenda, starting with abortion on demand, tax-funded abortions. So again, they're even to the point of they've just lost all sense of the sanctity of human life, haven't they? And that's not even important to them. But it's interesting, way back at the beginning today, we said they want to break down the cultural traditions. Go back and look at video clips of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, several of those people from 12 years ago, and they were, marriage had to be between one man and one woman, and they were against abortion on demand. And you're looking at this and you're going, wait a minute, what's happened? How come? And now, oh no, I'm in favor of, all kinds of things that they weren't. They've just, the things that they said, it was a lie. It was not a conviction. It was what would get them elected. And once they got elected, right away they're ready to change and head in a new direction because they have no real Christian values. It means nothing to them. Okay? And they're for the whole globalist agenda. They're for the whole gay rights agenda and the whole globalist agenda. They are extremely anti-parent. It is an effort to get the children to abandon the values of their parents. So we see immorality being promoted through our schools. So, what do you think the average child from a Christian home, if he is in a public school? He's in a public school setting, and in his classes at school, there's a sex ed class or film or whatever that's quite explicit. Do you think he's going to run right home and say, Mom, And the answer is no. It's shocking to them, first of all. It's embarrassing. And so the likelihood is they're not going to run home and say, Mom, you can't believe what they showed me at school. Because if he does that, his mother, if she has any concern for the truth, is going to go down to school and read in the riot act, and then the kid's going to be humiliated and embarrassed. So he's not going to do it. And this is what's happening. I still remember a pastor's wife from years ago. They were friends of ours. They're our age. And she was teaching in a public school setting, and she was teaching handicapped children mentally in different ways. And she told how that, yeah, they're teaching sex ed to these mentally handicapped young people and teaching them how to do a condom. And she was all excited about it because that way that there hopefully wouldn't be reproduction out of. And she was telling me this, and I'm sitting there going, what are you saying? She's a pastor's wife of a good, she's teaching this curriculum, we're talking 25 years ago. Okay, so if nothing else, just to wrap this up for today, listen, our biblical faith is the only thing that stands against the world becoming a one-world government, communist utopia not far down the road. The only thing that stands against it is Christianity. And when we become weak-kneed in our Christian faith, and when we make our Christian experience optional, we're doomed, and our nation is doomed, and the world is doomed. We need to wake up and realize how critical it is that as God's people that we make our Christian faith the most important part of our life and not just something we do on Sundays for an hour or two. Okay, be back in 10 minutes.